January 11th, 2024. We have an echo, so I'll wait. Okay, very good. The public can also access this meeting via WebEx technology. The Burlington High School Building Committee will hear public comments in person and virtually. Meetings are also broadcast live on Burlington Cable Access, and video audio recordings are being made. The meeting of the Burlington High School Building Committee will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in any specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. If you are participating remotely, please identify yourself by typing your name on the screen in advance and verbally once you are identified to speak. We request that you please turn on your camera. Comments and statements are limited to 3 minutes. You can access this meeting with access code 2344-814-7210, and the password is Burlington. If we could stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Okay. The first item on the agenda is the approval of November 28, 2023 minutes. Do I have a?
I would like to make an amendment to it, or, I mean, very minimal, or should we do that later?
No, what is your suggestion?
I was going to make a motion to approve them, but delete this phrase "as by MSBA rules" on page 5. It got probably transferred from some template or something. So the minutes said "as required by MSBA," and we're not following that. So I'd just like to remove that one sentence. And so I'd like to make the motion, if it's okay with you, Chris.
Sure.
Okay.
And it's okay with me too.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and go through.
Well, we need a second now.
I thought you were seconding it.
I'm seconding if that motion
with the motion.
Fine.
That's what I
fine.
thought you were doing. Okay. So we have a motion and a second with an amendment to remove the MSBA comment, right?
It's page 5, it's in the second paragraph.
Page 5, second paragraph, if people did not hear that.
Wendy's here.
Oh, okay, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and take a vote. Ms. Simon?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Ms. Chen? Dr. Chen, I should say.
Oh, no, it's okay. Aye.
Dr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Massardo?
Aye.
And Ms. Monaco?
Aye.
And the chair is an aye, so that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 700. Next item on the agenda is the invoices and comments for approval. If you want to go ahead and, who's doing the presentation?
Yes, this is just our Doran Whittier invoice number 1 for November 2023 in the amount of $18,000. And then our Doran Whittier invoice number 2 for December of 2023, also in the amount of $18,000.
Okay,
I move we approve the invoices as presented.
Second.
and we're approving both of them at the same time, correct? Okay. I will go ahead and take a vote. Ms. Simon?
Aye.
Dr. Chen?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Dr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Massardo? Ms. Monaco?
Aye.
Chair is an aye, 700. All right, and you said in comments for approval? I don't know if that was a mistake. Oh, commitment. Oh, jeez. I've skipped ahead. All right, public comment. You can tell it's been a long day. Is next. Is there anybody, I don't see anyone in the room, but is there anyone who wants to make any public comment on the line? Please hold your hand up. Okay. So the next item is the SBC current voting members. And Mimi had made some comments at the last meeting about some concerns she had. And I just wanted to open up for discussion about that, and then we can have a path forward. So I know, Mimi, you're feeling a little bit under the weather. So if there's anything else you would like to add this evening, I'd like to offer you the opportunity to speak first so that you may go when you're ready. So- She's not speaking? Okay. And is there anybody online who would like to make any comments? No, hands still? All right. And anybody in the room? People don't know, but Mr. Kuno holds up a little sign that says hands or no hands, so we can see it. So that's what we're all chuckling at a little bit. So the one thing that I would like to suggest, and we can discuss it if you'd like, but I would at this point like to state that I'd like to go ahead and suggest that everyone who's a current member of this building committee to have a voting right. I think all but the students, if everyone agrees to that. I'm open to voting on that, or if anyone wants to have additional discussion, please let me know.
Melissa.
Yes, Ms. Massardo.
I know that I think the commentary last time included removing the school employees from being voting members, and I think, right, the district employees, and I think Dr. Condi had asked not to be a voting member in the first place, so I'm in favor of that. I know we have a few other folks that are district employees also on the committee, and I know there had been pushback on the Fox Hill Building Committee from having non-residents also be voting, so I know that was a concern as well.
Any other discussion or comments in regards to that?
Yeah.
Ms. Monaco.
Since I'm probably the one person who's been on a whole bunch of building committees, I'll just comment that the school employees that know the district so well and all the ins and outs have always been voting members. In fact, I've never been on a building committee before the Fox Hill one where everyone in the entire committee wasn't a voting member. So my personal preference is that all of us should be voting members because that's why we're here spending all our time. I'm certainly opposed to taking those people who know the district best off the committee as voting members.
Any other discussion? Yes, Mr. Campbell.
So I think some of the concern that we had brought up is that our superintendent is the employee of the school committee. And so it does put him in a very tricky position of trying to decide if he agrees with the school committee or not, considering that you oversee his evaluation and continuation here. So I think that is one of the things that I shared concern as well with Mimi, is you're putting both Eric and Lisa potentially in difficult positions of trying to decide this while they could still be active members if they choose. I mean, we have another building committee going on, other school committee meetings. They have plenty of other commitments here in the district. But putting them in a difficult position of trying to make that determination with which originally is why some of us had this concern, is this felt like an extension of school committee, and wanting to make sure that we are making this a larger committee with larger votes for the other members, the parents that are on this board, the teachers that are on this board, the other people that are here that also can have an equal weight, because the idea of this school building committee is to be an advisory board that is separate from school committee. Those school committee members obviously are represented, but when you look at the makeup of the purpose of a school building committee is to have multiple different opinions here to best inform our town, our school committee, because ultimately then the decision does go back to school committee, but making sure that multiple people have a say here in the votes. But that was one of the intentions here and one of our my concerns of having putting Eric and Lisa in that type of a situation.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Brooks?
Yeah, just a comment. There's been some social media folks expressing opinions, town meeting members as well, that, unelected folks voting on boards such as this is not really a good idea, and there's sitting members on this board right now. So I just want to enter that into the conversation because, again, to have a discussion about all things relevant, there's been opinions expressed that folks that are unelected on a board voting shouldn't be, and again, there's members sitting on this committee now that have made and expressed those opinions publicly.
Thank you. And Mr. Davidson?
That might have been me. My struggle with this was more specific to the.
Could you speak closer to
I'm
the mic,
sorry.
please?
My struggle with this was, and I still struggle with it a little bit, but when we had the elementary school building committee, and it went from making decisions about a building to doing what I thought was changing kind of the culture of the town with elementary education. I would have those same struggles with this building committee if one of the choices we could make is combining the middle school and the high school and doing a giant, I don't mean to go mega, but doing a bigger project where all of a sudden now we put 8 through 12 together. That to me requires at least that the people that made that decision can be held accountable by somebody in the next election. When it comes to a building committee, I think there are going to be so many things approved and decided beyond this, including funding by the town. If we will, for this, I think debt exclusion is obvious, and by town meeting to bond the money and all of that. So it's a little different. Because we're here for that purpose, a building committee. The size of the committee, on one hand, it's like, wow, that's really large, and you do end up having a majority of a vote that isn't elected in this current setup. So I struggle with that a little bit, but I also can't see asking people to come and then sit and not have a vote. And it's like I'm not exactly sure why they come to all the meetings. So I would support everybody having it, as long as it stays, it's a building committee and we know what we're doing. And so.
Any other comments?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mr.
sorry.
Yeah, no, if I can't see someone, that's fine. Yes,
So
Mr.
I think
Kavanaugh.
a point of clarification here would be so we currently have 7 voting members who were sworn in by our town clerk. If there were to be an election and one of the 5 school committee members would not be reelected, I would assume, and I might be wrong, but assume that they would stay on the building committee since they're sworn into it. So while we can hold them accountable as elected, officials, that would not necessarily change the makeup here unless those that have the voting members would actually change it. So I think that would be my concern for that. And we're talking about a multi-year building commitment here, and the importance of having building committees with a breadth of opinions here is that some of this is non-political, that we are able to get opinions from parents, we're able to get from town meeting members, from Ways and Means members, from school committee members, from our own teachers and staff, in hopefully a non-political manner, and avoid some of the things that came up in the last building committee, because I think the ultimate thing is we want good discussion. This is going to be expensive. The taxpayers need to know what we're going to be weighing, how we're going to be weighing. We want more input, not less. And I think if we find ourselves in the same thing with Fox Hill Building Committee, we have the opportunity to really alienate our tax base, our voters, in this process when we're actually wanting to bring them in more.
Any other comments? Ms. Simon?
I think we're in a really unique situation. I don't think I think it's really rare, if at all, that all of the school committee members are on a school building committee. That's not the way it generally goes. It doesn't mean we can't do that. But the reason that it turned out this way is because of the nature of our particular school committee, and we made that decision. There's no reason we can't do that, but it's really complex. I, I, I know on the Fox Hill School Committee, like, not everybody's a voting member, and I don't think any of the teachers are. So, but I tried to find out and didn't ever find out exactly how the voting members on the Fox Hill School Committee got decided. So, and people went on and people went off depending on different situations. So I actually would like to, I think this is a good discussion. I think it's important. I think I would like to do a little research because I'd like to know how do other towns, and they're not the same, we don't have to do it the same, but why do other towns choose X, Y, or Z to be their voting members? So for example, MSBA has a list of people they require to be on the committee, but they don't require who's going to be the voting members, to my knowledge. I have not heard that. So that means they want someone who's an engineer. They want someone who's involved with taxes in the town. They want district administrators and all those kinds of things to be represented. And so that's how we ended up with this committee that we have. And then it was sort of, well, who would be the voting members? And that's what we're trying to figure out. I would like to perhaps, I don't look forward to having more of this conversation, but I'd like to suggest that we table it, that we find out a little more about how other towns have chosen and why they've chosen to have, because if, for example, I'm inclined at this point to not have Dr. Conti and Dr. Chen be on the committee because of the various dynamics going on. But does that mean no teachers are on the, do we not want to have any district employees? But if there's no teachers, then Bob and Nicole are also district employees, and yet they bring a wealth of knowledge and expertise, just like Mrs. Monaco just said. So I would like to suggest that we table this and talk to other towns, and I will do some of that. Other people certainly can do that themselves and bring more information. And as you just said, Mr. Campbell, I think it's important that we try to make sure everything's on the table, that we get the input that we need, and but we are in a specific situation where this school committee felt the need for all of us to be on this committee, and that's because of specific things to our town. And I'm not ready to give that up, but I do think that it'd be helpful to get more information about why different towns have chosen. I'm repeating myself now. So I'd like to make a motion, if it's that we table this discussion, continue it at our next meeting or whenever we feel like we have more information. Maybe not too long, because some people want to change it.
And again, it doesn't say that we were actually taking a vote. It was expected. So I have no problem with it being tabled, but I don't think you need a motion.
Okay.
I think that that's probably the best thing to do. I really wanted to start the discussion, just to hear where people are at this point. And there's certainly many, many other meetings that we're going to have. It's not we have to rush into a decision on this at all. So again, I have no problem with us doing a little additional investigation and having more discussion about it, because it is important. No hand raised anymore, or we're good? And again, is Mimi on? Does she want to speak? I know I don't know if you're having trouble, but I did want to give you an opportunity. Like I said, I know you weren't totally feeling 100%. I didn't know if you heard me. Or it stepped away. Okay. Okay. Is her hand on now? Okay. Yes. Mimi?
Why this? Can you hear me?
We can now.
Yes, I know you want the camera to be turned on. However, I'm quite under the weather and I'm not up for showing my face right now. But I just wanted to acknowledge that you had given me the opportunity to speak, and I'm just not in a position today to take advantage of that. So for that reason only, I am in favor of postponing, but in general, I don't think this should be postponed indefinitely, and it would be great if the next meeting there could be a robust discussion and a decision made. Thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. And Ms. Monaco?
As Martha mentioned, looking at other communities, I guess that's great, but I'm just thinking back to this community. And the building projects for Francis Wyman Memorial, Marshall Simons, They were all SBA projects, and I was very surprised with the Fox Hill project that there were some people who didn't get to vote, because in those other projects that I mentioned, it was done with the MSBA form where you have this, that, and then you have extra people. You might have so many parents, so many teachers, and there was never even a discussion about it. Every member of the committee got to vote. So that's just how it's been done here always, and I'm baffled as to why we didn't do that with the Fox Hill Committee. I just don't get it.
Thank you, Ms. Monaco. So like I said, we'll table this. We can all do whatever research we want, and then we'll put it back on the agenda for our next meeting. So let's go ahead and move on to the designer proposal update and next steps, please.
Sure. I think that's when I step in, right? So thank you very much. You'll see on the slide number 6, we did have our site walkthrough in mid-December. Bob led a whole bunch of folks through the building. In terms of the RFS, I would say, over 50 firms, but certainly 25 design firms did download the information. Approximately 6 or 7 were in attendance at the walkthrough. What we received this past Monday were 2 proposals from Tape Architects and Jonathan Levy Architects, which is a joint venture with a larger firm, DLR Group. And I think I'm going to pause there because I imagine the question's going to be, well, did we expect to get more? And I'm just looking for a shaking of heads, and if you want me to address that, I'm happy to.
Yes, that was certainly my first question
Yep.
when we spoke.
So, we've talked a lot about this internally. We obviously have an architecture firm as part of our company, so we are in the world of submitting proposals. And what I can tell you is a number of different things. It could be the job type. This is, we all know, a challenging project. We, are looking at probably a phased occupied renovation. That is, it's a very large school, so it's going to take an appropriate firm to be able to do with that. The workload, and I've mentioned this to a couple of you. So I mentioned our architecture side. So we are presently on an MSBA job where in North Attleboro, where they're probably, they're going to do all 3 options, but I think they would like a new school, and 2 designers submitted proposals. So in that sense, we're absolutely no different. And the MSBA has to deal with that. They had 2 proposals submitted. The time of the year, I don't actually buy that one. Everybody works and they know how to put proposals together, but maybe it was the time of the year. And I think, but last year, I think you mentioned Fox Hill was at the same kind of time frame, and so other things that are potentially out there. So, and what's going on in Burlington, there's a number of projects that are being discussed and evaluated, from the Fox Hill School, from this project, a potential new police station, and firms will look at that, and even a comment was made at the site walkthrough of, oh, you're going it alone, and isn't that risky? That you're going to do all this work and maybe you get to the end and then the town doesn't support it. And firms have to evaluate that in the context of other work and what's worth chasing. So, that is definitely a possibility. And then, the last one is, and this was a comment made by somebody at the walkthrough as well. One of the larger design firms said, we know that the warrant's for $1.5 million. Is that really meant to cover all the costs? And the answer to that was yes. And so, that's a fact. Somebody asked that question. And what I can tell you is that, with the MSBA, when this happens, when you have less than 3, they will ask the OPM can you go out and gauge what the opinion was of the firms that actually did turn up, showed interest, and then didn't submit. And so we are in the process of doing that. What I can tell you is that we've heard from 2 firms, and that reason, that political, are we going to get the vote, the risk of that, because, and this happens, where a firm does all this work, we do all this work, and then the town turns it down. And Andover is a classic example. It just happened. And so I think firms evaluate that risk, and they choose which jobs they want to go after. But coming back to where we are, the 2 firms that have submitted are reputable firms that have a ton of experience building schools here in Massachusetts, both MSBA, non-MSBA, and I can go into more, and Steve might go into more, a little description about them if folks want that. But the position that we are in, I will look at it from a more positive light. We have 2 firms that have put the work in that are capable of doing the job. We need to find out if they have the right skill set and experience to do this job. And so I know that I had previously recommended that, we evaluate the proposals, which I'm still recommending we do, and we have a tool that we're going to share with the building subcommittee so that you can go through that evaluation. But our recommendation now is for us to go to these firms, tell them that we want to interview them, give them the extra week to prepare. They're gonna hear this meeting and be able to address that. And bring them in on the 25th and determine whether or not one of them is the right fit. Is it possible that neither of them is the right fit? Yes. And what do we do then? We bring the boat back into the harbor and we figure out what our next steps are, whether or not we re-advertise and do something along those lines. So I'll pause there for additional questions because I've been talking for a bit.
Thank you. I appreciate you covering everything that you and I spoke about.
Yep.
Does anybody else have any other questions or comments in the room? I'll ask first. Ms. Massardo?
I just, first, I'm glad we saw both of these, I think, on Fox Hill, so that was good. But I just happened to open this up, and it said in our RFS, we said we preferred or we were leaning towards a renovation. I'm just curious because I thought the point of the feasibility study was that we wanted to explore all of the options. And I know with Fox Hill, a renovation was actually more expensive. So, and I was under the impression that was a concern here too. So I don't understand why we are already leading with renovation.
I don't think that's what it says in the RFS. I think
Okay.
what this person is saying is that based on their evaluation of the project
Okay.
and through the walkthrough and comments made, that in meetings that a renovation is likely the preferred solution.
Okay. It says it's been made clear from your SOI that a renovation is the stated desire of the town.
Well, that's the SOI. That's the statement of interest
Okay.
that's submitted by the district
Oh.
to the MSBA.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So
that's not
that's what
not our
they're
document.
using.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Does that influence the submissions?
I don't think I can answer that. I'll be speaking on behalf of firms that I don't work in.
I think what we see a lot of times is that designers that propose have a limited set of understanding of the project because they just haven't been brought in or been part of the town's process for quite a while. So they are relying on a lot of public information that's available or discussions at meetings. But yes, the point of the feasibility study is to determine the correct path. But knowing that they have a very limited amount of time, I think they're trying to glean from what's available to them. But if part of the interview process is to make that more clear, we can make that part of the question and answer portion or ask them to address that in their interview. I think most of the times a renovation is so unappealing because a lot of times you just physically don't have the space. And that was certainly the case in Fox Hill. But here it's a little bit of a different story. So I don't know that I would have jumped to the same conclusion out of the gate. However, I think just the fact of how much square footage is here based on the population. It deserves some merit to look at wholeheartedly instead of kind of cutting corners and going straight to another option that may be more appealing in other projects or in other project types.
Thank you. And I think, Ms. Simon, did you have a question?
I have a different question now. I'm not sure, you said that, and I wasn't sure what that you were referring to. So if you could, are you saying, can you kind of repeat it without saying that, so I know what the reference is?
I think I was referring more to the proposer's narrative in responding to a renovation-only option, or that decision's already been made. I think they came to that conclusion based on some public information, but I don't think that's the intent of the RFS or what the feasibility study's intention is.
Through the chair, if I may follow up. You also referenced that would be the easier way, and I didn't know if you were referring to a new building or an old building, and you referenced our population size. And so can you explain that part?
Yeah, just talking purely from a square footage that already exists to the student population.
So does that mean it's a benefit to us to do a renovation? Is that what you're saying?
I think there's a clear benefit to studying it as an option.
As an option, okay.
In that determining whether it has merit or not to take to the next phase of the project to study further.
And I just want to then add that, if I may, that there's a reason why we started considering a new building, and that was because we have had a significant HVAC feasibility study done that came back at about $80 million, and for just doing the HVAC. And it appeared that renovation alone was not a great way to go ahead. And so I am hoping to get from this process a real feasibility study that really does look at, does it make sense to renovate? Does it make sense to build new? How are we going to do it? And, you know, when I imagine, given that we have no swing space, but we have these non-education program sections, this wing over here on central office, you know, in my mind, and I've talked to a number of people, you know, we might be able to, as you mentioned, if we could find space for some of these office and other needs, could we tear down this wing and move kids in here and build something new and tear down another wing? And is that considered renovation or is that considered new? So that's sort of a question.
That would fall under the ad reno, and I think you'll see that in some of their concepts and proposals where you do take a wing, knock it down, build something, move students into that, and then just continue the hopscotch.
That's good. So
Yep.
the ad reno is the term. So we're looking, I'm hoping we're looking at ad reno and new. So I agree with that.
Yep.
And I haven't seen these yet, but if we do have, because we have these extra week, maybe we could make it clear I feel like we all want to know not just reno, but we want to know what are the pros and cons of all of this. That's what we're looking for in this feasibility study, so that the whole community knows that we're looking at all the options. Because I talk to people who are like, of course you should just do a new building. And I talk to other people like, well, why, you know, of course we should just renovate, you know. So, but that's the why we're hiring you folks. So that's what I would, okay.
Right. And there's a lot to take into consideration, too, in terms of building something new is where. And that's part of the consideration for this, every project, really, when you're building a school or renovating, is where would it go if in the town if we decided that, or that's the option that was best, right?
Mm-hmm.
No hand up or hand up?
Not hand up, but if I can ask a question that
Sure.
was asked online. Mimi asked, did we receive any interest from any women-owned design companies?
Neither of these firms are women-owned, but they all, through their consultants, have to meet the SDO standards for MBE and WBE, and they're committed to doing that. And I'm pretty sure that a number of the consultants are, you know, MBE and WBE.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Ms. Simon?
So I'm not sure if I'm jumping the gun here, but if I understand correctly, we have we don't have to do that first round of cutting down. And you mentioned that we could give these two firms an extra week to prepare. And so I would wonder if this group tonight could not come up with the questions for the interview, but to specifically, so that these firms know these
Yep.
are the things we're looking at. So how do we do that?
So typically in this process, for those of you that are familiar with the DSP at the MSBA, the MSBA provides typically 5 questions that the designers are meant to address during their 25 minutes. We have a slightly longer time. I think Mike mentioned this previously. I think we should give them an hour. We should give them a half an hour to kind of go through what they would like to discuss. But in addition to that, there's a number of questions that we should be asking them. And, I'll run through 5 or 6 that I just have here. In terms of, describing your experience with high school educational projects, because that's what this project is. Describe how you collaborated with a large SBC, other committees. Describe your experience utilizing social media, the internet, and other methods of engaging the community. So that's a topic. What are your approaches for occupied and phased renovations? Describe your approach to designing handicap accessible spaces in an existing building, because we have that here. I want them to discuss their current workload and how your team's approach is to completing the different phases of the projects, because as you'll see in each of their proposals, they list the projects that they have ongoing. They each have commitments elsewhere, and we want to understand who's the team and what level of commitment are they bringing to the table. So provide examples in how they specify building systems, either in a new building or in an existing building. So whether it's lighting or HVAC or auditorium controls, how do you come about coming to those decisions? And then the last one is really a code-related question, which is experience with the stretch code here in Massachusetts. And so those were 6 kind of topics and areas that I think it's critical for them to all address. And I would just craft letters to them that basically outlines those questions and those topics and say, please ensure that you address these during the interview process. In addition to that, one of the beautiful things about this being televised is that they're watching, right? And so that's a good thing. And, I want to encourage the firms, and I would like to encourage this group, that it should be a dialogue. Like, it's not just the questions that we're going to put to them. If a question comes up during the interview, we should be putting it to them there so that they can't have a scripted answer. And so it's not trying to put somebody on the spot, but we are trying to elicit as much information and glean as much from them. It's an interview. And we want to make sure that we get the party that this committee is most comfortable with. So
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions, comments, or? Okay.
Catherine,
Yes, Ms. Massaro.
I have a little bit more of a procedural question. I know it's not MSBA, so we're trying to mimic MSBA here. I know there's also Massachusetts procurement laws. So is there a mechanism for us to try to get more here? I guess that's the gist of what I'm asking.
So 2 parts to that questions, I think. One, there isn't a procurement law that says that we have to solicit more responses. We're not in violation of anything.
No, I mean
there.
can we get more?
You can re-advertise.
We have to start over. Okay.
You would have to start over, and we've talked about that internally as well. We have 2 firms that are willing and able and want this job, and if you pull the plug now and choose to re-advertise, I think what you do is alienate the 2 firms that showed the most interest in the job in the first place. And that's why I would like to bring them in, interview them, and then come to that decision. If they're not the ones, then we have to do something different. And that's part of the process. I think we've talked about it, extensively internally, and it's a recommendation that we think this is the best way to go.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? And Bob, you see any online? Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to the next item, goals and working group.
You want to do this? Yeah.
So as previously discussed at the first SBC meeting, and as Terry had sent out, we provided a questionnaire to the building committee, so that way we could get to know you a little bit better, know what your common goals were, as well as identifying some working groups that you'd like to participate in. Some of the common goals from the responses that we received included meeting the educational program, cost efficiency / reasonable budget, 21st century learning, a healthy building, improving the space for all, which includes teachers, students, and the broader community. Since we provided this slide, a couple additional members did today provide some responses to me. So if you have not provided responses, please do fill out the questionnaire so that way we can identify if there's any other common goals and or working groups that you'd like to participate in. So some working groups that we did identify included the facilities assessment group, the design group, educational programming, community outreach / public relations, site logistics and phased occupancy, financial and bonding, and sustainability. So ultimately our goal is, once the designer is on board, is to share these working groups with the design team to review some upcoming meetings and working groups that we would like to explore within the feasibility study. And these working groups are subject to change. They can evolve over time as far as during the different phases of the project that we're in, as far as involvement from the building committee and the members itself. As you know, from Fox Hill specifically, we've invited other people outside of the building committee to a lot of our working groups, and we definitely encourage that here in this project because there are so many important people within the community and within the district, I'm sure, that would like to participate in some of these discussions. And as far as communication, there was a project website, public informal meetings, newsletter, and Facebook. We're going to go over the website here in just a moment. Rachel's going to show you some of the development that has been ongoing regarding the high school website. And then the biggest concern was cost, funding, and approval of the voters. Definitely something we know from our experience with the Fox Hill project, and obviously want to make sure that we're carrying that as far as to this project, knowing how important that is to the community. So I'm going to actually turn it over to Rachel for sharing so she can go over the website information.
Well, are there any questions about that?
Right, I was just going to ask that.
Yeah.
Any questions on? Okay. Yeah, I'd love to see the website. I kind of preview myself,
Yep.
and I did share it with
And
one other.
just to reiterate what Christina said, we can send out the link again. I would like to get, everyone's, responses to that questionnaire because it's fulsome. It's what we should have. So.
And I think it
Anyway.
was due like on the 22nd of December, and
Well, it's
it just
it's
got, I'm
fun-
sure it
it's
got messed
fungible.
up,
Time for everyone.
It's a
People
busy time.
were busy, so
Um,
yeah, so again.
We'll send out a reminder
Yeah.
to folks that haven't, and I'm sure we'll get the responses. It
Perfect.
doesn't take that long.
Like 2 minutes.
Says somebody with the most recent experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So again, if we could go ahead and have the link for the website.
Yeah, and I'm going to turn this over to Rachel, but just to kind of give some backdrop here, there was some questions back in the interview process about the Fox Hill site, and, we took that internally and have, gone back and built a site here for the high school that I'm hopeful. I've previewed this with a couple of the members just to make sure that I wasn't going off the reservation. And I think, Rachel, are you online now?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. All right, so tonight we wanted to walk you through the Burlington High School project website that we have been working on. This website is a work in progress. It will continuously be updated as time goes on, but the goal here was to make this website informative and user-friendly. So we also have our tabs along here. at the top, easy to find. This is our home page. And then on the home page, we will also post meeting information so that it is easily accessible for all. Just going to quickly walk you through all the tabs we have. So we have the About page. Here we will just provide a little write-up about the project and where we are in the process. Our existing conditions page has your HVAC and accessibility upgrades report. We also have a bunch of existing photos from Burlington High School that Terry took on one of his walkthroughs. So you can see through those.
Still like being built.
Our community outreach page has a project calendar, and this is where we will post all our SBC meetings for January, February, and then we can add any additional meetings that we have coming up. We have an upcoming meeting dates list right here, just another form for people to look at. We have a place for community meeting presentations, and then SBC recording. So if you actually click here, this will bring you right to the BCAT website, and it has all of our recordings.
I think, just to chime in, one of the pieces of feedback that we got was organizationally how this all works. And so I think people are generally familiar with a website that has these tabs like this. And, whether or not these are the exact tabs that we should have is subject to discussion. And, what I would say is that the working group for public relations and outreach, I would want to schedule a meeting with them kind of soon to really dive into this, to go into it, to take feedback. I don't expect all of us to try to do this tonight, but I think it's a really good start in terms of how we've broken this up, and organizationally it's easier to find the information that I think people are looking for. And if folks don't feel that way, well, then let's fix it. But I want to put it out there at the start where our working group is happy with what we're presenting.
Are you able to send the link? Could we send that link that you sent to me, or you don't want to share that one?
Yeah, no,
because I felt like that gave me the opportunity to see where we were heading and how easy that one was.
Yep.
I was able to find everything I wanted to.
Right.
Click. It was just very.
Yeah,
like, one
Rachel, we
click
can
and I
do
was
that,
like,
right? Yep.
Okay. All right. So thank you. And then I think
We
we'll
can.
be able to make a better, educated decision too, based on what we've seen you've already put together. And,
Right.
And then
Yep.
that group can then make final decisions. And then I think we have to make a decision on the domain too. So
There is that.
not necessarily tonight, but of course my computer is. Yep.
So Rachel, you just want to go through those last few tabs?
Sure. So we have a committee page. We've listed all the SBC members. We've also noted here the existing voting members. And we have an area for meeting materials. So if you click this link, it will have the agenda, meeting minutes, presentation, and any other materials, invoices that we've reviewed. So I will add one after tonight's meeting.
And one of the things that we talked about, and this will be, a discussion, is as project continues, right, you get more and more information. And pulling up websites or a page that has 50 different clicks that may have timed themselves out will probably create an archive within the site that has all of the information. But, if we're 2 years from now and I have the first SBC meeting listed on that page, that's not particularly helpful. And that's how we will evolve. What you want is relevant information that's easy to find and easy to access and click. And when it comes to historic information, yes, it's important to have it. It's important to have it organized correctly, but it's an archive. It's not what we're trying to really put in front of folks.
Thank you. All right. Do you,
We just have, these haven't been developed yet, but just news and other information. Some FAQs, and then we have a page for team members where we just listed the SBC members again. We have a write-up about Doran Whittier, and if you click our logo, it will go directly to our website. Architect and construction manager possibly to be decided. And then we have a contact page finally, just where people can write in and submit their questions or comments.
excellent. There we go. Go back to the beginning. Perfect. So like I said, I think we'll go ahead and get the link out for the sample that you sent to me,
Will do.
and then we can decide when we're going to have that meeting with the next the public relations group. Ms. Hyman.
I noticed you've got it in English and Spanish already, and I just wanted to check in. I don't know if Dr. Conti or Dr. Chen know. Are we going to need to have this be translated into all of our home languages, and how does this fall under our other requirements?
I have to ask Lauren that, but it's a separate website, and it's hosted by, not by the school district, it's hosted by Doran Whittier, so I think that gives us a bit of a pass.
Yeah, so through the chair,
Ms.
on
Massaro.
Fox Hill, we did do 10 languages of translation, but it is simply linked on the district site, so it does not fall under the, like Eric said, the civil rights requirements. But we did, I think we paid extra to upgrade the website for the 10 languages, and Lauren and Lauren, Angelo, and I was going to say Aiden, someone at Doran Whittier, or maybe we can resupply the languages, but you must be able to see what languages the other one is in. If we could just do those 10, it's probably worth it.
Thank you, Ms. Massardo. Okay. If no one has any other questions or comment on the website, we can go on to educational programming.
I would just say, sorry, we did list some potential domain names on the page. Those are 3 examples that are currently available. If this group had a preference right now, I can just secure it, which is probably a good thing. The one, the only reservation that I have with them is that there's a Burlington, Vermont, and we have
Many Burlingtons.
right, but I'm tying it to, we also have an office in Burlington. And I know that in Burlington, they're looking to do a high school as well. So, do we?
They have a website up already.
Yeah. So, and
What is their can you see what their domain is, Dr. Conti?
right,
What is it?
Burlington School District, Vermont would be what that is. So,
Madam Chair, if I could, I'd
yes.
advocate for the BHS building project, because, common reference in town is BHS, and I think it's going to resonate with people and kind of stick with them.
I agree.
Second.
I agree too. That was the first one that I thought about too.
I
Ms.
just like to
Simon?
say it's shortest.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Ms. Simon.
Do we want to add MA to that? I'm not against that one, but do we want to say BHS Building Project MA or BHS MA?
Nobody will remember it.
No one will remember. I'm worried.
I mean, we say Fox Hill, and Fox
Yeah.
Hill means nothing to anyone else. Like,
I think we have direction.
Okay. All righty.
That's great.
I think, I don't think I need to take a vote, but if you all would like, I can get the 7 votes, but I think we're good.
Okay, so moving on to educational program, this will be kind of quick. So over the course of leading up to the holidays, Dr. Conti and I had some back and forth, as well as with Mark, the principal of the high school, and they have shared a few documents with us. One is, I think, most relevant, the 3-year plan, right, Dr. Conti, which I think goes through next year. Is that right? Right. I thought the one I got was 22 to 25. be that as it may, they've shared that with us. We have shared a recent educational plan that we thought was most relevant that we've done in-house, which was at Pentucket. That's a middle high school, but it really talks about the middle school and the high school, and it is recent. I think the intention was for Mark and others to review that information and then us have either a follow-up discussion. The good thing is we have all the information now, and so we're prepared to kind of walk the designer through that because they're going to have a keen interest in that educational programming study. So I just wanted to let you know that that's kind of what's going on behind the scenes between ourselves and the school staff.
Dr. Conti?
Terry, normally I'd say the program conversation would be short because MSBA is so formulaic, and we just
Right.
want to make sure that the building blocks support the program that we have. This program's been a little bit more interesting for me because it certainly has to support our program of studies and our schedule and things like that, but because we're unshackled from MSBA, would the local cable access TV station in studio that is currently housed in here, could we consider that part of our program? So again, I would assume that we could. And are there other community needs, because the building was initially built for 2,000 kids. We would roughly have 1,000 kids now. I guess what I'm saying is there would be some more flexibility for the program. So again, I can make sure the academic program is reflected, but I think there might be an opportunity for a broader conversation in terms of programming. Am I thinking about that wrong?
No, I don't think you're thinking about that wrong, and I know that we discussed that at the last meeting, that there is a number of non-educational programmings here in this building, and the decisions as to all of those and whether or not they stay in a renovated or ad reno or a new space is all something that we're going to need to have to consider, and so that includes BCAT, district offices, early childhood, the lab program, and so we will need to address all of those through that process.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Ms. Massardo?
Is there a way through the feasibility study we can explore, the feasibility of keeping certain ones and then infeasibility of keeping others? I think that I'd really like to understand that. I think we have a lot. I would love to build a community pool on this site too, right? Like I'd love to load this up with community features and get a yes vote, but that's going to drive the costs. As I don't know where we're putting anything on the site to begin with, so I do think we're going to have a hard conversation on what stays and what might have to go. So can we do that as part of the I know sometimes on some of the costs, right? Like with BCAT and BECC and central office or without, especially I know the space summary, right? Like we can see those on the Excel and see what the square footage of
Yep.
central office is, and so
W-
that I just want to confirm that that's
W-
also something
we
do.
absolutely can do that,
Okay.
and I think I've just added a seventh question to the designers for the interview, which is to address this exact point. How do we develop the educational program in conjunction with what we have in this space, and how that becomes part of the overall programming, not just the educational piece. Does that make sense to folks?
Yeah. Ms. Monaco?
Interesting when you mention the programs, except the BCAT, they are all educational, with central office, the early childhood, the lab program. So since they're housed in this building, we kind of have to keep them or else find another place to put them. And I would say at this moment in time, even looking into the future, we don't have another place to put them. So I think they have to stay.
I think I had my MSBA hat on a little bit there, as opposed what
Would
they
question
uh,
the preschool and the lab program and all of that?
No, through the chair, Ms. Monaco, I was just comparing the program document for Fox Hill and the other ones I've written compared to this building. So there's a lot more latitude in this building. Obviously, more space would drive more cost. So all I'm saying is if we were to want cable access TV space in a new high school, I'd have to write it as if it were a high school program. And there are
Right.
many high schools that have
Student
cable TV
involved.
programs involved in that. I'm just saying we would shape it a little bit differently. That's all I'm saying. But we have latitude here. So let's say we wanted to build a satellite police office. Please, I'm just making this up as I go, not suggesting anything, where we put the three, whatever, a satellite, whatever. You all have that ability. You can do whatever you want, I guess is what I'm saying. A community pool, Ms. Massardo said. So again, so we'll take care of the educational piece. I just think the program document is going to be something that you all may want to weigh into. Like, you don't have to tell me how many sections of calculus we need. Like, we can figure that out. But I'm saying there may be other things that, while we're here, you might want to keep. And as Ms. Monaco said, we have things here that I'm not sure where else they would go. So clearly need a central office. If we don't include the central office in the high school, then we would need to find another spot to put us. That's all.
Yes, go ahead.
Not to belabor the point, when it comes to the MSBA's process, the educational program document is important because it justifies the space from educational value to the students of that particular school. And I say that because the MSBA is very interested in equity between other towns and districts it allows into their program. So they don't want to get too caught up in helping to fund or participate in funding space that might only apply to your district. It certainly would have value. They just, from an equity standpoint, they want to separate the educational spaces to make sure that their investment in your town goes to the educational delivery for those programs specifically. But Ms. Monaco, to your point, because you have a program in this building, suggests that the program has value in the town and you fully intend to continue to deliver it. So whether it's in the high school, future high school or not, there's still a cost to providing that program. And to the extent that the designers can address that in the interview, if it's of value, I think it's certainly an important point in the feasibility study to understand what might have some flexibility to stay or go. And I think the big question mark there is what's the cost for each of those, and I think you deserve to have all those options laid out so that the committee can make a decision.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Mr. Brooks?
No, just like that, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's a resource constraint argument versus a statutory constraint, and we got to understand how those two differ, right? Because we're not constrained by the statutory requirements of MSBA, and we really have to do that cost-benefit analysis on where we put things and how they fit into the puzzle.
Thank you. Any hands up? Okay. So next item is other topics not reasonably anticipated.
It's not another topic. I just have a couple more questions on the designer interview. Do you mind?
Okay.
It just made me think of this. When we did Fox Hill, when we presented our top 3 to MSBA, they had a sheet, I think it was either displayed on the screen or we got it at some point, that were the designer's costs, I think, compared to the average cost compared to other designers, like which designers schools on average cost within the standard deviation, like within the average. Do you know what I'm talking about? Can we get that for these? Okay.
So it's available as far as it relates to the MSBA's project specifically.
Yeah. Oh, all right. So we can grab that. And the second, can we go to these schools? I've only briefly, and I know no one's really seen these, but there's one in Framingham. I don't know. That's really helpful, especially having gone to a bunch of Danisco schools now. I know, like, I can feel a Danisco school. I'd love to maybe get a feel for one of these schools, and since we have some extra time, I don't know if that's feasible now or not.
I'm pausing because I don't think we've done that before.
Okay.
Leading up to an interview, but why don't I?
Yeah, you can
what-
certainly take that back.
I'll
Yeah.
come back to you on that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, go ahead.
We had a recent request to do something very similar, and I think the concern was depending on, trying to make it as even as possible. So we're trying not to, be unfair if one school couldn't make themselves available. I don't think we'd ask the designers to host the walkthrough, so we're getting the experience through the user, which certainly would have some value, but I think it introduces some variables we might not have as much control over as we'd like. It's a great idea. I think, Terry, your suggestion, maybe we kick it around,
Yeah.
ask around what other pitfalls there might be from just purely a procurement standpoint to make sure we don't get into any trouble to have to restart the process at all or really get into any statutory problems. So I think there's just some things there that it's a great question, but we just want to make sure we're not steering you into any trouble.
Yeah,
Thank
and I'll add to that. One thing that I am doing separate to this and don't feel that you need to is just checking references. So all of their main projects, I've reached out to all of their contacts. I've heard back from about half of them, but I will continue to do that, and we'll be able to report that back in terms of what their references are indicating. And know that, we know both of these firms.
Thank you. Any other, before I move on to the unexpected? Okay. Any other reasonably anticipated questions or comments? Okay.
Actually, I would like, once more, a little clarification, if we could. So last time we had the designer submissions, we had a culling of them, and then we had 3. So we're not going to do that, but are we going to get the 2 submissions now, and are we going to be rating them, or are we going to be waiting till we interview them, or how's this next step going to go, because it's going to be a little different?
So as you're aware, we do have a designer subcommittee made up of 12, which is actually going to go down to 11 because Mimi is unavailable to do that. So tomorrow morning I'm going to send this. It's basically a tool, and that's what it is. It's a tool to help you evaluate. It's based on 100 points. It has a bunch of different categories, but you need to thoughtfully go through each proposal, and ideally rank them so that we have some objective piece. I was going to have that back to me by the 17th. And then I will compile that and come up with an average score and so we will have a ranking of where we look at those 2 firms in relation to one another, and then we will go through the interview process and evaluate them through that, and then have a discussion about how we want to take that forward.
Did I clarify it for you? Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, and I'm going to give the public another opportunity for any comments. There's nobody in here and no hands. All right. Next meetings?
Yeah, if we just go to the next slide. So I want to thank everyone. We somehow came to an agreement on we're going to do this on the second Thursday of each month. And so that's how that will play out. One thing I will mention, and this was my fault, I had the minutes done probably 4 weeks ago, and I should have just sent them then. And for some reason, I just was like, oh, I'll send them right before the meeting so they can read them then. And everyone's like, well, that was 6 weeks ago. So you will get the minutes of this meeting sometime next week so that it's fresher in everybody's minds. And then the way this works is, it's nice being on a Thursday because I'll try and get all the materials to everyone on the Monday and get it posted on the website by Tuesday, and so it's a good schedule, and this also avoids school holidays. So,
Thank you. And so the next meeting is January 25th, 2024, the designer interviews.
yes, and I'm sure all of you can attend. The 11 that are on the committee is the ones that I'd really like to attend.
Exactly. And then the one after that will be February 8th, 2024 at 6:30.
Correct.
Okay. And anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Go ahead and take the roll call for that. Ms. Simon?
Yes.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Dr. Chen?
Aye.
Dr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Massardo?
Aye.
Ms. Monaco?
Yes.
Chair says aye, so it's 7:00. We are adjourned.